How many years ago Earth formed? Have you ever looked up at the night sky, stared at the moon, or felt the solid ground beneath your feet and wondered, how old is this world we call home? It seems so timeless, as though Earth has always been here, holding the oceans, the mountains, the forests, and the life that flourishes on its surface. But the truth is both humbling and astonishing. Earth has not always existed. Our planet, though ancient, has an age that science has carefully uncovered, about 4.54 billion years. That number might look like just a series of digits, but hidden within it is the story of cosmic firestorms, violent collisions, and the delicate emergence of a stable world capable of life. This is the story of Earth's beginning, stretching across billions of years, and it is as thrilling as any epic ever told. To understand how many years ago Earth was formed, we must first step back into a time before there was a planet at all, a time when only dust and gas floated in the vast cradle of space. It is here, in this mysterious nursery called the solar nebula, that the seeds of our planet were sown. Imagine a cloud swirling in the emptiness of the cosmos, stretching light years across, filled with hydrogen, helium, and traces of heavier elements born in the hearts of dead stars. This was the starting point of Earth's story. Out of this cloud, not only Earth, but the entire solar system emerged. The question, how many years ago did Earth form? Is not simply answered by stating a number. It is a journey through cosmic time. Scientists, through the dating of ancient rocks, meteorites, and the decay of radioactive isotopes, have pieced together the age of Earth to be 4.54 billion years, give or take a few million. To put this into perspective, if we compress the entire history of Earth into a single 24-hour day, human beings would only appear in the last few seconds before midnight. That realization alone makes Earth's age not just a number, but a profound window into our own place in the universe. In this script, we will dive deep into the birth of Earth, tracing its origins from stardust to a living world. We will journey through cataclysmic collisions, the formation of oceans, the rise of an atmosphere, and the dawn of life itself. The age of Earth is not just a scientific fact. It is the foundation of everything we know and everything we are. So, let us step back 4.54 billion years and begin the epic tale of how our world was born. To answer the mystery of Earth's formation, we cannot look at our planet alone. Earth's story is bound tightly with the birth of the entire solar system, for our world did not form in isolation. It was one of many children born from the same cosmic cradle. Scientists estimate that the solar system itself took shape about 4.6 billion years ago, and Earth, emerging slightly later, settled into being around 4.54 billion years ago. That tiny gap of tens of millions of years may sound like nothing in human terms, but in cosmic time it was the difference between a chaotic cloud of dust and the solid beginning of a planet. It all began with a giant molecular cloud drifting silently through the Milky Way. Such clouds are the birthplaces of stars, dense with hydrogen, helium, and the ashes of earlier stars that had exploded as supernovae. Somewhere within this vast, cold cloud, a disturbance occurred, possibly the shockwave of a nearby supernova. That disturbance set the gas and dust swirling, compressing under its own gravity, spinning tighter and tighter until a new star ignited at its heart. That star was our sun. As the sun flared to life, the surrounding material flattened into a vast, rotating protoplanetary disk. Imagine a giant spinning pancake of gas and dust, stretching billions of kilometers across. Within this disk, particles of dust, no larger than grains of sand, began colliding and sticking together. Static electricity, chemical bonding, and sheer gravity began to work their magic. Over time, these grains became pebbles, the pebbles grew into rocks, and the rocks clumped into ever larger bodies called planetesimals. It was within this chaotic, swirling arena that the earliest version of Earth was born. At this stage, Earth was not yet a blue planet with oceans and skies. Instead, it was a violent, growing mass of rock, constantly bombarded by asteroids and debris. Each collision added more material to its body, shaping it into a sphere. Why a sphere? Because gravity, the unseen sculptor of the cosmos, pulled equally in all directions, forcing matter into the most stable shape possible, a round ball. This is why, billions of years later, Earth appears round to us, even though mountains, valleys, and oceans break the smoothness of its surface. The timeline becomes clearer when we measure it. By studying the radioactive decay of isotopes in meteorites, the ancient leftovers of the solar system's formation, scientists have pinpointed Earth's age. These space rocks act like cosmic clocks, frozen in time since the beginning of the solar system. Their ages consistently point to about 4.54 billion years, aligning with the period when Earth first took shape. In other words, when you hold a rock, especially an ancient one, you're holding a fragment of a story that began almost 5 billion years ago. But Earth's early days were far from peaceful. The young planet was a seething, molten world, with its surface covered in oceans of magma and its atmosphere choked with toxic gases. The question of how many years ago Earth formed is answered not only by dating rocks, but by understanding this violent infancy. It was a time of fire and chaos, a time when Earth was being forged like a blade in the furnace of the cosmos. And yet, from this firestorm, stability would one day arise. Earth was beginning a journey that would eventually give rise to oceans, continents, and life itself. But before that miracle could happen, Earth had to survive its most violent chapter, the era of giant impacts. The young Earth, about 4.54 billion years ago, was not the calm and welcoming world we see today. Instead, it was a planet still under construction, caught in a cosmic shooting gallery where collisions were the rule, not the exception. Every day, asteroids, comets, and planetesimals smashed into its molten surface, adding mass, heat, and energy. Each impact reshaped the planet, melting rock, vaporizing water, and releasing gases into the growing atmosphere. This was an age of fire and fury, when survival meant enduring chaos on an unimaginable scale. Among these violent encounters, one event stands out as perhaps the most defining moment in Earth's early history, the giant impact that formed the Moon. Around 4.5 billion years ago, a Mars-sized body, often called Theia, crossed paths with a young Earth. The collision was catastrophic. Imagine two worlds colliding at tremendous speed. The force was so great that Earth's outer layers were torn apart, while Theia itself was obliterated. Debris from both bodies was blasted into orbit, forming a fiery ring around Earth. Out of this swirling debris, gravity worked its quiet magic once more, pulling the fragments together until they coalesced into a single, glowing sphere, our Moon. This was not a process of centuries or millennia, but of weeks or months. The birth of the Moon was fast, violent, and dramatic, and it forever altered Earth's destiny. Without the Moon, Earth as we know it, its tides, its stability, even the rhythm of life, would be unrecognizable. The impact also reshaped Earth itself. The colossal collision released so much energy that Earth was essentially melted into a global ocean of magma. For millions of years afterward, the planet's surface was a glowing, molten hellscape. Slowly, over time, Earth began to cool. Heavy elements like iron sank toward the core, while lighter materials floated upward to form the crust. This process, known as differentiation, gave Earth its layered structure, core, mantle, and crust that it still has today. The atmosphere, too, was in flux. The giant impact had blasted gases into space, but volcanic eruptions from within Earth's molten interior replenished it with water vapor, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and other volatile compounds. This early atmosphere was nothing like the breathable air we enjoy today. Instead, it was toxic and heavy, filled with choking fumes. Yet, within this harsh environment lay the seeds of transformation, for water vapor would one day condense into the first oceans. When we say Earth formed 4.54 billion years ago, it's important to recognize that what existed then was not the blue planet we know. It was a world still in the making, a place battered by firestorms and sculpted by unimaginable forces. The Moon, born from destruction, became Earth's eternal companion, stabilizing its tilt and slowing its rotation. Without this stability, the planet's climate would have swung wildly, making the emergence of life far less likely. Thus, the age of Earth is not just marked by a number, but by milestones: the coalescing of matter, the cataclysm of collisions, the birth of the moon, and the slow settling of a planet into something resembling stability. Each step was necessary, each violent chapter paving the way for the calm, life-bearing Earth we live on today. But the journey was far from over. The battered young Earth still faced millions of years of bombardment, a period scientists call the Late Heavy Bombardment, when asteroids and comets rained down in vast numbers. From destruction, however, came opportunity. These cosmic visitors carried with them not just devastation, but also the essential ingredients of life. After Earth's violent birth and the cataclysmic impact that gave rise to the Moon, our planet entered another turbulent chapter in its early history, the Late Heavy Bombardment, LHB. This dramatic period, which occurred roughly 4.1 to 3.8 billion years ago, was marked by a relentless storm of asteroids and comets crashing into Earth's surface. To imagine the scale of this bombardment, picture craters like those on the Moon, but magnified, multiplied, and stretching across a still cooling Earth. The Moon itself serves as a cosmic diary of this era. Because it lacks the erosion and plate tectonics that reshape Earth's surface, the scars of the Late Heavy Bombardment are preserved on its face. Every crater tells a story of impact, and since Earth and the Moon shared the same neighborhood in space, scientists believe Earth endured an equally intense barrage. Unlike the Moon, however, Earth's active geology erased most of the evidence. This rain of impacts was devastating, but it may also have been a blessing in disguise. Many of the asteroids and comets that slammed into Earth carried with them water and organic molecules, the essential building blocks of life. As these icy visitors vaporized upon impact, water vapor filled the skies and eventually condensed to form the first oceans. Slowly, the barren, molten planet began to wear a cloak of blue. It is almost poetic. Out of violence came the gentle seas that would cradle the earliest forms of life. The formation of Earth's oceans was not a simple event, but a gradual process. Water vapor from volcanic eruptions also contributed to the atmosphere, where it cooled and rained down, filling vast basins. Over millions of years, rivers carved into the crust, lakes appeared, and the first oceans stretched across the globe. By around 3.8 to 4 billion years ago, Earth was no longer just a fiery sphere. It was a planet of water and stone, a world beginning to resemble the one we know today. Alongside water, the atmosphere continued to evolve. At first, it was thick with carbon dioxide, nitrogen, methane, and ammonia. There was no oxygen, and the air would have been deadly to us. Yet this atmosphere performed two critical functions. It trapped heat, preventing Earth from freezing under a faint young sun, and it provided a chemical environment ripe for reactions that would eventually lead to life. Lightning strikes, volcanic activity, and ultraviolet radiation from the sun all contributed to a chemical soup that grew more complex over time. The age of Earth, 4.54 billion years, is a reminder that these transformations took place on timescales beyond human comprehension. Millions of years passed like seconds on the cosmic clock, and in that time Earth went from a molten inferno to a water-covered world. Each impact, each volcanic eruption, each drop of rain played a role in preparing the stage for something extraordinary, the dawn of life. It is astonishing to consider that the very violence of the Late Heavy Bombardment may have been necessary for life to exist. Without those cosmic collisions, Earth might have remained dry, barren, and lifeless. Instead, water flowed, oceans formed, and the chemistry of life began to stir. The Earth we walk on today, the water we drink, even the elements in our bodies, all trace back to those ancient impacts billions of years ago. And so, when we ask how many years ago did Earth form, we are not only speaking of a number. We are speaking of a series of transformative eras: the fiery birth, the cataclysmic collision that created the Moon, and the bombardment that filled Earth with water. Each chapter brought Earth closer to becoming a true home for life. Yet the story is only half told. Water and atmosphere had formed, but life was still absent. What would it take for the first spark of biology to emerge from chemistry? The answer lies in the next stage of Earth's journey, when the earliest signs of life began to flicker in the planet's primordial seas. By the time Earth was about 700 million years old, around 3.8 to 3.5 billion years ago, it had already endured unimaginable violence and transformation. The molten seas of magma had cooled, continents had begun to emerge, oceans covered vast stretches of the surface, and an atmosphere thick with carbon dioxide and nitrogen cloaked the planet. Earth was now ready for its next great leap, the emergence of life. But how did life begin on a world that was once nothing more than rock, water, and gas? This question has puzzled scientists for centuries, and while the exact details remain one of the greatest mysteries in science, there are powerful clues. The earliest evidence suggests that life started in Earth's primordial oceans, where a mixture of water, minerals, and atmospheric gases created what is often called a primordial soup. In this environment, energy from lightning, volcanic heat, and ultraviolet radiation from the sun may have sparked chemical reactions that built increasingly complex molecules. Among these molecules were amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, and nucleotides, the building blocks of DNA and RNA. Step by step, chemistry crossed the invisible line into biology. Tiny self-replicating molecules formed, capable of copying themselves and evolving. With time, these molecules became enclosed in simple membranes, creating the earliest cells. These primitive organisms are believed to be the ancestors of all life on Earth. The earliest fossil evidence of life comes from stromatolites, layered structures created by colonies of microorganisms, particularly cyanobacteria. Fossils of stromatolites date back to at least 3.5 billion years ago, showing that life had already established itself by then. These organisms were microscopic, but their impact was enormous. Through a process known as photosynthesis, cyanobacteria began releasing oxygen as a byproduct, slowly transforming Earth's atmosphere. At first, this oxygen reacted with iron in the oceans, creating massive deposits of iron oxide, rust, that today form rich iron ore deposits around the world. Only after billions of years did oxygen accumulate in the atmosphere itself, leading to what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event about 2.4 billion years ago. This was a turning point in Earth's history, for oxygen would eventually enable the rise of complex life forms. But in these early days, life remained simple. For billions of years, Earth was dominated by prokaryotes, microorganisms without a nucleus, such as bacteria and archaea. They thrived in environments that would seem hostile to us today: boiling hot springs, deep ocean vents, acidic pools, and frozen wastelands. These organisms were astonishingly resilient, adapting to every niche the young Earth provided. The emergence of life reminds us that Earth's age, 4.54 billion years, is not just a number etched in stone, but a record of miraculous change. From lifeless rock, water, and gas, the planet had given rise to something entirely new: biology. The line between chemistry and life had been crossed, and once it had, evolution began its long, slow march toward complexity. For nearly 2 billion years after life first appeared, the planet was still a microbial world. If you had traveled back in time to those ages, you would not have seen forests, animals, or even plants. Instead, you would have gazed upon endless oceans filled with microscopic cells, unseen to the naked eye, but alive nonetheless. These early organisms formed the foundation of Earth's biosphere, quietly shaping the atmosphere, the chemistry of the oceans, and even the geology of the planet. Thus, when we ask how many years ago did Earth form, and we speak of 4.54 billion years, we must also remember that for much of that time, Earth was not a planet of humans, animals, or even plants. It was a planet of microbes. And yet, within these humble beginnings lay the seeds of everything that would follow: the rise of complex life, the evolution of intelligence, and ultimately, the emergence of beings capable of asking these very questions. For nearly 2 billion years after its formation, Earth was a microbial planet. Life existed, yes, but it was limited to simple organisms, bacteria, archaea, and microscopic colonies that thrived in oceans, vents, and shallow waters. To the naked eye, Earth's surface might have looked barren, But beneath the waves, an invisible revolution was taking place. This revolution would forever alter the course of the planet's history: the rise of oxygen. Around 2.4 billion years ago, a phenomenon known as the Great Oxidation Event, GOE, transformed Earth's atmosphere. Until then, Earth's air was thick with gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen, but it contained virtually no free oxygen. Yet some of the earliest microorganisms, cyanobacteria, had mastered a groundbreaking process: photosynthesis. Using sunlight, they converted carbon dioxide and water into energy, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. At first, this oxygen didn't accumulate in the atmosphere. Instead, it reacted with iron in the oceans, creating vast layers of rust that sank to the seafloor. Over time, however, the reservoirs of reactive iron were exhausted, and oxygen began to spill into the air. This gradual enrichment of the atmosphere was both a crisis and an opportunity. For the anaerobic organisms that had thrived in an oxygen-free world, the new atmosphere was toxic. Many perished, driven to extinction or confined to oxygen-free environments like deep mud, hydrothermal vents, and underground niches. But for other organisms, oxygen was a gift. It provided a far more efficient way to generate energy, enabling cells to grow larger, more complex, and ultimately more powerful. This shift set the stage for a new form of life: eukaryotes. Unlike their simpler prokaryotic cousins, eukaryotic cells contained a nucleus and specialized internal structures called organelles. They were the architects of complexity, capable of forming multicellular organisms. The earliest eukaryotes appeared around 2 billion years ago, representing one of the most significant evolutionary milestones in Earth's history. These eukaryotes didn't emerge overnight. Their rise was the product of a remarkable symbiosis. Scientists believe that mitochondria, the powerhouses of eukaryotic cells, were once free-living bacteria that were engulfed by larger cells. Instead of being digested, they formed a partnership, providing their hosts with energy in exchange for protection. This partnership, called endosymbiosis, was the key to unlocking life's next great chapter. For nearly 1 billion years, eukaryotes and prokaryotes coexisted, evolving slowly. Then, around 600 to 700 million years ago, the stage was set for an explosion of complexity. Oceans teemed with microscopic plankton, algae, and the earliest multicellular life forms. By 541 million years ago, the planet entered what scientists call the Cambrian explosion, a relatively short period in which life diversified at an unprecedented rate. During the Cambrian explosion, Earth's seas came alive with creatures unlike anything seen before. Trilobites crawled across the ocean floor, sponges filtered water, early mollusks burrowed in sand, and the ancestors of today's arthropods, vertebrates, and echinoderms made their debut. For the first time in Earth's history, ecosystems of predators and prey emerged, setting in motion the great evolutionary arms race that continues today. The Cambrian explosion was not just a burst of creativity, it was the beginning of the world as we recognize it. The basic body plans of most major animal groups were established during this time, and many of those blueprints are still present in modern species. By this point, Earth was already more than 4 billion years old. For over 80% of its existence, life had been microscopic, hidden from sight. Yet within a relatively short span, complexity blossomed, and Earth became a planet alive with diversity. This is one of the most humbling aspects of Earth's age. For most of its 4.54 billion years, the world was nothing like it is today. Humanity, and even the dinosaurs, are recent arrivals compared to the long, patient history of microbial life and slow evolution. The rise of complex life was only the beginning. Over the next hundreds of millions of years, plants would green the continents, animals would crawl from the seas onto land, and entire dynasties of life, from trilobites to dinosaurs, would rise and fall. Earth, now a mature planet, would become a stage for endless cycles of creation and extinction. And yet, through all this change, the age of Earth remained the silent backdrop. The planet, formed 4.54 billion years ago, endured fire and bombardment, gave rise to life, and fostered the birth of complexity. Every fossil, Every rock layer, every mountain range tells part of this immense story, a story written across billions of years of time. By the time Earth was around 4 billion years old, life had already painted the oceans with astonishing diversity. Plants had colonized the land, insects had taken to the air, and fish had given rise to amphibians that crawled onto shore. But perhaps the most iconic chapter of Earth's biological history began about 250 million years ago, the age of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs first appeared in the Triassic period, rising in the wake of a mass extinction that wiped out many other creatures. Over the next 185 million years, they evolved into forms of incredible size and diversity, towering long-necked sauropods, fierce predators like Tyrannosaurus rex, and nimble, bird-like species that would one day give rise to modern birds. They dominated the planet's ecosystems, shaping forests, plains, and seas with their presence. During this time, Earth itself continued to change. The supercontinent Pangaea broke apart, creating the familiar continents we know today. Oceans shifted, climates warmed and cooled, and volcanoes erupted. Yet life continued to adapt. Earth, now about 4.3 billion years into its story, was a thriving planet, teeming with complexity and evolution. But no dynasty lasts forever. Around 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, unleashing catastrophic global consequences. The impact threw debris into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight, collapsing ecosystems, and driving the dinosaurs, except for their bird descendants, to extinction. This dramatic event was one of many mass extinctions that Earth has endured in its 4.54 billion year history. Each extinction was a tragedy, but also a reset, paving the way for new forms of life to rise. In the dinosaurs' absence, another group of creatures took center stage: mammals. Though they had existed in small, often nocturnal forms during the reign of the dinosaurs, mammals now diversified into every imaginable niche. Some returned to the seas as whales, others took to the skies as bats, while still others adapted to grasslands, forests, and deserts. Among these mammals, one lineage evolved larger brains, complex social structures, and eventually the capacity for language, tools, and culture. That lineage was our own. Humans, however, are astonishingly recent in Earth's timeline. Modern Homo sapiens have existed for only about 300,000 years, a blink of an eye compared to Earth's 4.54 billion year age. To put it into perspective, if Earth's entire history were compressed into a single 24-hour day, humans would appear in the final second before midnight. All of recorded human history, agriculture, cities, civilizations, technology, would fit into less than a fraction of that last second. This realization is humbling. Earth formed 4.54 billion years ago, survived fire, bombardments, and ice ages, nurtured life in countless forms, and only very recently became home to creatures capable of pondering its age. We are newcomers in a story that began long before us and will continue long after. And yet, our connection to this ancient planet is profound. Every atom in our bodies was forged in the hearts of stars before Earth even existed. The water we drink has cycled through oceans and clouds for billions of years. The ground beneath our feet holds rocks older than life itself. When we say Earth is 4.54 billion years old, we are not just stating a fact. We are acknowledging our place in a cosmic lineage stretching back almost to the dawn of time. So, how many years ago did Earth form? About 4.54 billion years. But the answer is not just a number. It is a saga of creation and destruction, of oceans and continents, of microbes and mammals, of dinosaurs and humans. It is the greatest story ever told, the story of our planet, the cradle of life, the stage on which every triumph and tragedy of existence has unfolded. And as we look forward, one truth remains clear. Earth's story is far from over. Humanity may be a recent chapter, but we are now part of this vast, ongoing epic, woven into the fabric of a world that began billions of years ago and will endure for billions more.